Hello, welcome to my channel, The Resting Mind. Right now, as you settle into the stillness of your room, a photon of light is beginning a journey across a distance so vast that our human languages have no words to describe it, only numbers that feel like dreams. We are not just measuring distance tonight, we are measuring time. For to look across a light year is to look into the past, and to understand the light year is to understand the very fabric of our reality as it unfolds in the silent depths of the cosmic ocean. While the scale of the universe is immense, this vastness is not a void to be feared. It is a buffer of peace, a grand architecture that ensures the safety and solitude of our world, acting as a protective stillness that keeps the chaotic fires of distant suns from intruding upon our rest. By the end of this journey, you will understand why the light year is the universe's way of keeping its secrets, ensuring that we only see what we are ready to understand, and you will see your place within this grand design in a completely different light. To begin this exploration, we must first define the yardstick of the gods, a unit of measurement that defies our terrestrial logic and forces us to reconsider the meaning of now. On Earth, we are used to measuring things by how long it takes to walk to a neighbor's house, or how many hours we must spend in a car to reach the coast. But in the deep, these human scales crumble into insignificance. We measure the universe in light years because light is the only thing that moves fast enough to act as a reliable messenger across the abyss, traveling at precisely 299,792 kilometers per second. This speed is not merely a record to be broken by a faster engine, but is instead a fundamental constant of the universe, a speed limit that defines how quickly information can pass from one point to another. That is why, when we speak of a light year, we are actually speaking of a distance of approximately 9.46 trillion kilometers, a number so large that if you were to drive a car at highway speeds, it would take you over 11 million years to cross just one. Helps astronomers understand that the universe has its own nervous system, where the signals take years, decades, or even millennia to arrive at their destination, meaning that the cosmos we observe is always a mosaic of different eras. We often think of the present moment as a universal now that everyone shares. But the speed of light dictates that now is a local experience, and the further we look into space, the further back in time we are allowed to witness. This is a reminder that the universe is a time machine, and every photon that strikes your eye tonight is a ghost of a moment that has already passed, carrying with it the history of a star that may no longer even exist. It is a strange realization that we are space monkeys trying to map an ocean of time, using the primitive tools of our ancestors. Yet it is this very limitation that provides us with a sense of existential safety. We are separated from the violent births and deaths of stars by gaps of time so wide that they act as a cosmic cushion, protecting our fragile biology from the overwhelming intensity of the greater whole. You may notice that our understanding of this speed began not with modern telescopes, but with the careful observation of the moons of Jupiter in the 17th century by Ola Roma. Roma noticed that the timing of the eclipses of the moon Io seemed to change depending on whether Earth was moving toward or away from Jupiter, which led him to the radical conclusion light does not travel instantaneously. Before this discovery, humanity lived in a world where we believed we saw everything as it happened. But Romer's work revealed that we are always living in a slight delay, a grace period between the event and our perception of it. That is why the light year is not just a distance, but a unit of history, a preservation of the past that allows us to see the universe as it was, rather than just as it is. It is a beautiful irony that we spend so much of our time on Earth trying to boil water slightly more efficiently to power our cities, while the very light that feeds our world is a relic of an ancient journey. As we take our first step beyond the familiar boundaries of our atmosphere, we encounter the light second, a measurement that grounds us in our immediate cosmic neighborhood. The moon sits approximately 384,400 kilometers away, a distance that light traverses in just 1.3 seconds, creating a gentle echo of a moment just past. When you look up at the silver disk of the moon from your window, you are seeing it as it was a heartbeat ago, a conversation across a small ripple of time that reminds us of the intimacy of our lunar companion. During the Apollo missions, this delay was a tangible presence, a pause in the radio transmissions between the astronauts and Houston that highlighted the growing gap between humanity and its home. It is a reminder that even at our closest neighbor, the vacuum of space begins to assert its influence, stretching the threads of our connection into a thin, luminous web. Imagine the light of the moon reaching out to touch your skin. It is light that left its source when you took your last breath, a soft reflection of the sun's energy that has journeyed through the dark to find you. This light second is a bridge, a way for us to practice our understanding of cosmic distance before we venture into the true deep, where the numbers begin to lose their meaning. We can see the craters and the plains of the moon with our naked eyes, and because the delay is so short, it feels as though we are standing on its shore, looking across a narrow strait of the cosmic ocean. But as we step beyond our silver companion, the ripples of time begin to stretch into waves, and the familiar landmarks of our world begin to fade into the background. We are moving from the scale of heartbeats to the scale of minutes, where the sun itself becomes the dominant force in our reality. The Earth sits 150 million kilometers from the sun, a distance light traverses in 499 seconds, meaning that the sun we see is always the sun of 8 minutes ago. This 8-minute journey is the umbilical cord of light that feeds our world, providing the warmth and energy required for life to flourish, yet it is also a reminder of our isolation. If the sun were to vanish in an instant, we would continue to bathe in its warmth and see its brilliant glow for 8 full minutes, unaware that our anchor had disappeared into the dark. We frame this lag as a grace period, a cosmic cushion that connects us to our star, while maintaining a respectful, life-giving distance that prevents us from being consumed by its fire. That is why the light minute is perhaps the most important unit of time in our lives, for it represents the delay that allows life to exist in a state of balanced equilibrium. You look up at the sky and see the sun as a static object, but it is actually a roiling, chaotic engine of fusion, and the light it emits has spent thousands of years working its way from the core to the surface before it even begins its 8-minute journey to Earth. Every photon that warms your face is an ancient traveler, a data point in a vast calculation that began long before our species had even learned to walk upright. This is the quiet chaos of the solar neighborhood, a place where the scale of energy is so immense that our primitive technology seems like a candle in a hurricane. Yet, within this 8-minute gap, we find a sense of peace, a realization that we are exactly where we are meant to be, held in a golden zone of habitability by the invisible hands of gravity and time. As we drift further outward, past the orbits of the planets and into the cold reaches of the outer system, the light minutes begin to turn into light hours. Pluto sits at the edge of the planetary realm, nearly 6 billion kilometers away, a distance that light takes 5.5 hours to cross, marking the transition into the deep cold of the Kuiper Belt. Here, the sun is no longer a warm disk, but merely the brightest star in a velvet sky, its influence beginning to wane as we approach the frozen border of our system. This is the realm of the light hour, a place where the silence is absolute and the texture of the vacuum feels like a weightless blanket, shielding the inner worlds from the true deep of interstellar space. The Kuiper Belt is a library of ice, holding the secrets of our beginning in a cold, safe embrace, where comets and dwarf planets drift in a slow, majestic carousel that takes centuries to complete a single orbit. It is also a reminder that our solar system is not a closed room, but a porch looking out onto a vast, dark lawn. The Oort cloud represents the final frozen outpost of our system, a spherical shell of icy debris that stretches up to a light year away from the sun, marking the true limit of our star's gravitational reach. To reach the inner edge of the Oort cloud, light must travel for months, and to cross its entire span, it must travel for over a year, creating a boundary of ice that defines the edge of our home. The silence here isn't empty. It is a crystalline cold that has remained largely undisturbed since the birth of the sun, a reservoir of primordial material that occasionally sends a messenger into the inner system in the form of a long-period comet. When we look out from this frozen border, we are truly looking into the abyss, for the distance to the next star is so great that it makes the entire solar system look like a single grain of sand on a vast beach. This is where the light year becomes our primary unit of measurement, for anything smaller is simply inadequate to describe the gap that lies ahead. You are now drifting beyond the last frozen outposts of our system, entering the great void that separates us from the nearest star, Proxima Centauri. Between you and this next sun lies a distance that light itself takes 4.2 years to cross, a gap of over 40 trillion kilometers that contains almost nothing but the pure, unadulterated vacuum. 4 years of silence, 4 years of starlight, drifting through a darkness so pure it feels like a weightless blanket, shielding us from the intensity of the galactic core. This 4-year gap is a reminder of the true meaning of a light year, for it represents a journey that our fastest spacecraft would take tens of thousands of years to complete. We are space monkeys caught in a cosmic cage of distance, yet this isolation is a mercy, for it ensures that the stars remain as points of light rather than overwhelming fires that would disrupt the delicate balance of our world. To bridge this gap is to understand that the universe is mostly empty space, a realization that can feel like an existential crisis, yet it is also a source of total relaxation. void, there is no noise, no friction, and no passage of time that we can perceive without the ticking of a clock. There is only the steady, unchanging glow of the distant stars. Helps astronomers understand that the silence between the stars is not a lack of something, but a presence of its own, a medium through which the light of the universe travels to reach our eyes. We see the light of Proxima Centauri not as it is tonight, but as it was when we were 4 years younger. A reminder that every star in the sky is a snapshot of a different era in the history of the cosmos. As we move deeper into the galactic tapestry, these snapshots begin to accumulate, forming a forest of stars that stretches for 100,000 light years in every direction. The Milky Way is a spiral of light and shadow, a wave of density in a cosmic ocean that contains hundreds of billions of suns, all moving in a slow, majestic carousel around a central heart of darkness. If you could run your hand along the Orion arm, you would feel the gentle pressure of gas clouds and the soft warmth of a billion suns, all separated by light years of protective silence. Our galaxy is 100,000 light years across, meaning that light from one side of the disk takes 100 millennia to reach the other, a time frame that encompasses the entire history of modern humanity. When we look toward the galactic center, we are seeing light that began its journey when our ancestors were first painting on the walls of caves, a luminous network of history that connects us to the very beginning of our species. It is a forest of stars where each tree is a sun, and the distance between them is the room the universe has made for us to exist. This galactic tapestry is not a static structure, but a living, breathing entity that evolves over billions of years, driven by the invisible currents of gravity and the slow death of old stars. You may notice that the spiral arms are not solid objects, but are instead patterns of traffic, regions where gas and dust are compressed to form new stars, which then drift out into the quieter regions of the disk. This is the quiet chaos of the Milky Way, a place where the scale of time is so vast that the birth and death of a sun is merely a flicker in the greater darkness. We are part of this massive, rotating whole, a single data point in a calculation that has been running since the dawn of time. And there is a profound comfort in knowing that we are carried along by these celestial tides. As we look beyond the edges of our own galaxy, we see that the Milky Way is just one island in an even larger ocean. The intergalactic abyss is a place of such purity and loneliness that the light of distant galaxies can travel for millions of years without ever striking a single atom of matter. Between the Milky Way and our nearest large neighbor, the Andromeda Galaxy, lies a gap of 2.5 million light years, a distance so immense that the light we see tonight left its source before our species had even evolved. The light of Andromeda, traveling since before we walked the Earth, finally arrives, soft and weary, to meet your gaze. A reminder that we are witnessing a version of the universe that no longer exists in the way we see it. This is the loneliness of light, a journey through a darkness so absolute that it makes the gaps between the stars look like crowded city streets. Yet, in this abyss, there is a sense of absolute peace, for the distance is so great that nothing from that distant world can ever truly touch us, except for the gentle pressure of its light. The purity of the void is a reminder that the universe universe is mostly a place of rest, where the light of galaxies drifts like embers in a cold wind, slowly losing its energy as the space between them continues to expand. We see these distant islands of stars as tiny smudges in the dark, yet each one contains billions of worlds, each with its own history and its own silence. This is the macro stillness of the cosmos, a scale where the movement of entire galaxies is seen as a slow, graceful dance across the eons. We are space monkeys looking out from our tiny blue dot, trying to comprehend the sheer magnitude of a 2 million year journey. Yet the very act of looking connects us to that distant shore. As we zoom out even further, we see that these galaxies are not scattered at random, but are part of a massive, luminous network known as the cosmic web. The Laniakea supercluster is our home in the cosmic web, a collection of 100,000 galaxies that are all flowing together toward a shared center known as the Great Attractor. This is not a violent pull, but a gentle drift, a current in the cosmic ocean that carries us across hundreds of millions of light years of space. Like the veins of a leaf or the silk of a web, these threads of light stretch across the deep, connecting every atom in a silent, luminous network that defines the large-scale structure of the universe. We are part of this flow, a tiny part of a massive movement that is guided by the invisible hand of dark matter, a substance we cannot see but whose influence we can feel in the way the galaxies move. This is the hypnotic complexity of the cosmos, a place where the scale of distance is so great that it becomes a form of meditation, a way for us to let go of the small worries of our daily lives. The Great Attractor sits at the heart of our supercluster, a region of space that is so heavy and so powerful that it draws entire galaxies towards it like moths to a flame. Yet it remains hidden from our view by the dust of our own Milky Way. We are flowing toward it at hundreds of kilometers per second, a journey that will take billions of years to complete. A reminder that the universe is always in motion, even when it feels still. This flow is a reminder of our connection to the greater whole, a realization that we are not isolated islands, but a part of a universal current that links us to the furthest reaches of the observable universe. As we drift toward this shared center, we find a sense of belonging in the vastness, a feeling of being exactly where we are meant to be in the grand calculation of the cosmos. But even this supercluster has its limits, for we are eventually stopped by the cosmic horizon. The observable universe is a sphere 46 billion light years in every direction, the limit of how far light has been able to travel to reach us since the beginning of time. This horizon is not a wall, but a curtain of beginning, a boundary beyond which the light of the early universe has not yet had time to find us. It is the universe's way of keeping its secrets, ensuring that we only see the part of the cosmos that is within our reach, while the rest remains in a state of eternal silence. Beyond this horizon, there may be more galaxies, more stars, and more voids, but they are forever separated from us by the expansion of space, a distance that light can never cross. This is the ultimate scale of the silence between the stars, a realization that we are kept safe within our circle of light, protected by the very laws of physics that define our existence. Acceptance of this limit is the final step in our journey, a letting go of the need to see everything, and a return to the peace of our own immediate reality. The light year is the universe's way of ensuring that we are never overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the whole, giving us a sense of distance that acts as a form of existential safety. We are here, in the cradle of the light, witnessing the history of the cosmos from a place of total calm, where the billions of light years between the stars are not empty space, but the room the universe has made for us to breathe. The light of the cosmic microwave background, the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, is the final texture of our reality, a soft, warm static that fills the void and reminds us of our ancient origins. As we return our focus to our own breath, we find that the scale of the universe is the scale of our own peace. The billions of light years between the stars are not empty space. They are the room the universe has made for you to exist, to breathe, and to rest in the cradle of the light. That photon that began its journey millions of years ago, traveling across the intergalactic abyss and through the forest of stars, has finally found its destination. It has found you. It is a reminder that you are a part of this grand architecture, a data point in a beautiful calculation that has been running for 13.8 billion years. The stars are far away, and you are here, exactly where you are meant to be, held in the protective stillness of the cosmic ocean. The universe will be here when you wake, continuing its slow, majestic dance across the eons. But for now, there is only the silence and the soft glow of the distant past. The scale of the universe is the scale of your own peace, and the silence between the stars is the same silence that now fills your room. A weightless blanket that invites you to let go and drift into the deep. You are safe in the vastness, protected by the light years of distance that ensure the solitude of our world, allowing you to rest without the intrusion of the greater chaos. The stars will continue to burn, the galaxies will continue to flow, and the cosmic web will continue to hold everything together in its silent embrace. You have journeyed to the edge of seeing and back, and you have found that the void is not a place of fear, but a place of total, absolute rest. Sleep now, in the cradle of the light, and let the gravity of the cosmos hold you in a state of eternal peace. The stars are far away, and you are here, exactly where you are meant to be. The universe will be here when you wake. Sleep now, in the cradle of the light. To understand the architecture of this silence, we must first look toward the nearest shore of our cosmic ocean, which is the moon hanging in the velvet dark above your window. While it may feel as though the moon is a constant, immediate presence, it is actually the first major stepping stone into the realm of the light second, a distance of approximately 384,400 kilometers. You may notice that when you look up at its cratered surface, you are not seeing the moon as it exists in this exact microsecond of your life, but rather as it was 1.3 seconds ago. This brief delay is the first ripple in the fabric of our reality, a subtle reminder that even at the fastest speed allowed by the laws of physics, information takes time to travel across the void. That is why the conversations between the Apollo astronauts and the mission controllers in Houston were marked by those iconic rhythmic pauses, as every word uttered on Earth had to traverse that vast gap. creating a conversation that existed across a small but measurable stretch of history. This distance is so immense that if you were to attempt to walk to the moon at a standard human pace, it would take you nearly 9 years of continuous movement without rest. Yet light covers this span in the time it takes for a single, slow heartbeat. It is also a distance that helps astronomers understand the fundamental relationship between space and time, as we begin to realize that the further we look into the deep, the further back in time we are inevitably peering. When you feel the soft glow of moonlight on your skin during a clear night, you are touching energy that left the lunar regolith over a second ago, meaning that the silver light is a gentle echo of a moment that has already passed into the archives of the universe. We can see this delay most clearly when we use lasers to measure the exact distance to the lunar surface, firing beams of light at retro-reflectors left behind by the Apollo missions, and timing how long it takes for the photons to bounce back to our telescopes on Earth. The result is always the same, 2.6 seconds for the round trip, which serves as a cosmic yardstick that grounds our understanding of the solar system in a tangible, measurable lag. This 1 second gap may seem insignificant when compared to the vastness of the galaxy, but it represents the first true break from our earthbound intuition, where we assume that seeing something is equivalent to it happening right now. In the cosmic ocean, there is no such thing as an instantaneous now, because every object we perceive is filtered through the speed of light, ensuring that our experience of the universe is always a collection of beautiful, overlapping histories. If you were to stand on the lunar surface and look back at the Earth, you would see our blue marble as it was a second in the past, creating a synchronized dance where neither world can ever truly see the other in its absolute present state. This realization creates a sense of profound stillness, as it suggests that the universe is built with a series of protective buffers that prevent the chaos of distant events from reaching us all at once. As we move beyond the silver glow of our companion, we find that these ripples of time begin to stretch into much larger waves, transforming the way we perceive our entire solar neighborhood. The moon is merely our backyard, a small clearing in the forest of the night, yet it teaches us the most important lesson of the light year. That distance is simply time in another form. It is also a reminder of our own physical limitations, as the 3 days it took for the Saturn V rockets to reach the moon are condensed into a single second of light travel, highlighting the immense gap between our biological speed and the fundamental speed of the cosmos. As you settle deeper into the quiet of your room, consider that even this small distance is a form of solitude, a gap that ensures our world remains a distinct and separate island in the dark. We have mapped the lunar mountains and the dusty plains of the Sea of Tranquility, yet we are always looking at them through this thin veil of time, a 1 second delay that acts as the first chapter in the story of the Great Silence. This delay is not a barrier to our understanding, but rather a framework that allows us to witness the celestial dance without being overwhelmed by its scale, providing a gentle introduction to the much larger distances that await us further out. That is why we can feel a sense of peace when looking at the moon. It is close enough to be a companion, yet far enough to remind us that we are part of a much larger, much older architecture, When you look up at the night sky, you are engaging in a form of time travel that begins with this simple 1-second leap, a small step that prepares the mind for the vast, multi-year journeys we are about to undertake. It can also be comforting to realize that the light of the Earth is currently traveling outward at that same speed, carrying the image of our world into the deep, so that any observer on the moon would see us bathed in that same ancient, 1-second-old glow. This symmetry of light and time is what binds the solar system together, creating a network of delayed reflections that form the texture of our local reality. And as we leave the orbit of our silver companion, we find that the light of the sun begins to take on an even more significant role, as the ripples of the light second grow into the long, steady currents of the light minute. This transition marks our entry into the solar neighborhood, a vast backyard of fire and gravitational precision, where the yardstick of human experience is replaced by the astronomical unit. At the heart of this region sits the sun, a colossal engine of nuclear fusion that serves as the anchor for our entire world, situated approximately 150 million kilometers away. This distance is so immense that even light, traveling at its relentless speed of nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, requires 499 seconds to complete the journey from the solar surface to the Earth. That is why, when you step out into the warmth of a clear afternoon and feel the sunbeams resting upon your shoulders, you are experiencing the touch of a star as it existed 8 minutes and 20 seconds in the past. It is a strange and beautiful realization that the now we perceive on Earth is actually a composite of different histories, creating a reality that is fundamentally delayed by the time it takes for information to cross the vacuum. Helps astronomers understand the sun's complex behavior by allowing them to observe solar flares and massive prominences as they erupt from the photosphere, even though the visual evidence of these events only reaches our telescopes long after the initial magnetic snap has occurred. We often think of the sun as a constant presence, yet we are always looking at a memory of our star, a fact that creates a cosmic cushion between the cause of solar activity and our local effect. If the sun were to suddenly change its luminosity or vanish entirely, we would continue to live in its familiar golden light for over 8 minutes, unaware that the source of our vitality had been altered. This 8-minute lag is not a barrier to our understanding, but rather a grace period, a structural buffer in the architecture of the universe that ensures our world is kept at a respectful, life-giving distance from the raw power of the solar core. As we drift further into this backyard of fire, we notice that the other planets in our neighborhood are also bound by these same laws of temporal distance. Mercury, the smallest and innermost world, sits only 3.2 light minutes away from the sun, bathed in a constant, intense radiation that makes its surface a landscape of extremes. Venus follows at a distance of approximately 6 light minutes, its thick atmosphere trapping the heat of a sun that is always 6 minutes younger than the one we perceive from our own orbit. Even Mars, our red neighbor, exists at an average distance of 12.6 light minutes, meaning that any conversation held between a future explorer on the Martian surface and a controller on Earth would be punctuated by a 25-minute round-trip delay. That is why the solar system feels like a quiet, slow-motion carousel, where every signal and every reflection must navigate the deep currents of the light, minute before it can be received. It is also a humbling perspective to consider the sheer efficiency of this stellar engine compared to our own primitive efforts to harness energy. While we as a species are still largely occupied with finding more complex ways to boil water to turn turbines and generate electricity, the sun is radiating enough energy every single second to power our entire civilization for millions of years. And it does so with a profound, heavy silence that fills the inner solar system. We are like space monkeys watching a grand celestial furnace from a safe distance, utilizing only the tiniest fraction of the light that washes over us. This connection to our star is a reminder that we are part of a larger, luminous network, a web of starlight that feeds every living cell on our planet through a continuous umbilical cord of photons. The silence here in the solar neighborhood is not empty, but is instead a library of light, holding the recent history of our sun in a warm and steady embrace. You may notice that as we move through this region, the darkness of space does not feel cold or hostile, but rather like a clean, quiet void that allows the light of the sun to travel unimpeded. This is the first true step into the cosmic ocean, a place where we begin to see the universe not as a collection of objects, but as a series of events separated by time. We are floating in a sea of 8-minute-old light, anchored to a star that provides us with everything we need, while remaining just far enough away to ensure our solitude. As we continue to drift toward the outer edges of this neighborhood, the light minutes will begin to stretch into light hours, and the familiar warmth of our backyard will start to fade into the crystalline chill of the outer dark. Beyond the Kuiper Belt, the architecture of our solar system begins to stretch into a scale that defies the simple geometry of the inner planets. As we move into the scattered disk, where icy worlds like Eris inhabit highly elliptical orbits that take them hundreds of astronomical units away from the sun's fading warmth. This region serves as a bridge to the true deep, a place where the light of our star has traveled for over half a day before it touches the crystalline surfaces of these distant outposts. And it is here that we begin to appreciate the immense volume of the vacuum that surrounds our home. You may notice that the sun has now become a brilliant diamond in a velvet sky, stripped of its golden corona and reduced to a silent sentinel at the center of a vast, dark web. As we continue our outward drift, we leave the flat plane of the ecliptic behind and enter the inner Oort cloud, also known as the Hills Cloud, a thick torus of icy bodies that represents the first layer of the sun's final gravitational frontier. This structure is a reminder that the solar system is not merely a disk, but a sphere of influence, a three-dimensional volume where trillions of cometary nuclei drift in slow, majestic orbits that can take millions of years to complete a single revolution around the distant solar core. That is why astronomers view this region as a fossil record of the early universe, a pristine laboratory where the building blocks of life and water have been stored in a state of thermodynamic stasis since the dawn of time. To navigate this space is to understand the light month, a unit of distance that encompasses over 770 billion kilometers, a span so wide that the fastest human-made objects, like the Voyager probes, will not reach its inner boundaries for hundreds of years. Yet, it is only a fraction of the total distance light must travel to exit our system entirely. The cold here is not merely the absence of heat, but a fundamental property of the environment, a crystalline stillness that allows for the preservation of delicate chemical signatures that would be destroyed by the intense radiation of the inner solar neighborhood. We are now standing on the edge of the outer Oort cloud, a spherical shell that extends nearly 2 light years into the dark, a distance that marks the point where the sun's gravitational pull finally yields to the collective mass of the Milky Way galaxy. This is the frozen border, the protective skin of our cosmic cradle that ensures the stability of the worlds within, and it is a library of ice, holding the secrets of our beginning in a cold, safe embrace. As we look out from this final outpost, we see the true scale of the silence that lies between us and the stars of the Orion Arm. A silence that is not empty, but filled with the potential of worlds yet to be discovered. This vast structure was not always so distant, as many of these icy fragments were once much closer to the Sun, inhabiting the space between the giant planets during the chaotic early epochs of our system's formation. It was the immense gravitational influence of Jupiter and Saturn that acted as a cosmic slingshot, flinging these primordial remnants into the far reaches of the abyss, creating the very shell that now protects us from the wandering influences of the interstellar medium. This process of gravitational scattering helps astronomers understand how the architecture of a planetary system is refined over billions of years, moving from a crowded and violent nursery to a structured and stable environment. As we drift through this shell, the distance between individual objects grows so vast that you could travel for a lifetime without ever seeing another piece of ice. Yet the collective mass of these trillions of fragments creates a gravitational anchor that defines the limit of our home. The sun's light, which felt so immediate and powerful on Earth, now takes weeks and then months to reach these frozen travelers, losing its ability to drive weather or melt ice, but never losing its role as the central coordinate of their existence. If you were to look back from this distance, the solar system would appear as a tiny, luminous bubble in an ocean of shadow, a sanctuary of order in a universe that is mostly vast and empty space. This perspective is essential for understanding the true meaning of a light year, as it shows us that the majority of our star's domain is not made of fire and rock, but of silence and distance. The Oort cloud is the final layer of the solar house, a grand attic where the oldest memories of our origin are kept in the dark, and as we pass through its outer curtains, we prepare to enter the true interstellar void, where the yardstick of the gods is the only measure that remains. Here, the concept of a light month fades into the majesty of the light year, and the silence between the stars becomes the primary texture of our journey. This transition is not an exit into danger, but a movement into a deeper peace, a realization that the vastness is a buffer of stillness that preserves the sanctity of our world. As the last gravitational threads of the sun begin to fray, we find ourselves at the edge of the Great Gap, looking across the 4-year distance to the nearest flickering lights of our neighbors in the galactic forest. To truly grasp the architecture of this silence, we must first master the yardstick of the gods. travels at precisely 299,792 kilometers per second. This velocity is not merely a speed limit for physical objects, but is a fundamental constant of our reality that defines the very boundaries of the now, meaning that the further we look into the deep, the further we are actually looking into the past. It helps astronomers understand that the universe does not reveal itself all at once, but rather unfolds in a series of delayed echoes, where the light arriving at our eyes is a preserved memory of a cosmos that has already changed. If we consider the universe as a vast, interconnected nervous system, we begin to see that its signals do not move with the instantaneous snap of a human thought, but rather with a measured, rhythmic pace that takes years to cross the gaps between nodes. Within your own body, a neural impulse travels at about 100 meters per second, allowing you to react to the world in what feels like real time. Yet on the cosmic scale, the nervous system of the galaxy is far more sluggish. When a star at the edge of our vision collapses or flares, the signal of that event must travel across the vacuum for centuries before it reaches our senses, suggesting that the universe is a body that is only ever aware of its own distant limbs, as they were in the ancient past. That is why the light year is the most honest measurement we possess, as it acknowledges that space and time are inextricably woven into a single fabric known as space-time. A single light year spans approximately 9.46 trillion kilometers, a distance so immense that it defies the traditional logic of the human mind, which is accustomed to the terrestrial scales of cities and oceans. To put this in a domestic context, if you were to enter a vehicle and drive at consistent highway speeds without ever stopping, it would take you over 11 million years to cross the distance of just one light year. We are space monkeys who have spent our history learning how to boil water to create steam for our turbines. Yet we are attempting to measure a distance that light, the fastest thing in existence, requires an entire year of constant travel to bridge. You may notice that this realization brings with it a profound sense of intellectual awe, as it transforms the night sky from a flat ceiling of lights into a deep, three-dimensional library of history. Every light year we look out is a year of history we are allowed to witness, creating a preservation of the past where nothing is ever truly lost, only delayed. When you look at a star that is 10 light years away, you are not seeing the star as it exists in your present moment, but as it existed a decade ago, meaning that the photons touching your skin tonight began their journey while you were living a completely different chapter of your life. This delay is a form of cosmic grace, a protective buffer that ensures the events of the high-energy universe do not overwhelm our fragile biological existence. The speed of light serves as the pulse of the universe, a rhythmic heartbeat that dictates how quickly information can flow from one sun to the next. It is a reminder that we are part of a grand, slow-moving carousel, where the distances between the stars are not empty voids to be feared, but are the necessary room the universe has made for us to exist in peace. As we look deeper into this yardstick, we see that the light year is not a wall that keeps us in, but a window that allows us to look back to the very dawn of time. We know that this constant is the only thing we can truly rely on, in a universe that is otherwise in a state of constant flux and expansion. While the galaxies themselves may be drifting apart and the stars may be burning through their nuclear fuel, the speed at which their stories reach us remains fixed. This creates a sense of existential safety, a realization that the universe is structured in a way that preserves its own story, allowing us to reconstruct the biography of the cosmos simply by looking further into the dark. That is why we do not measure the silence between stars in kilometers or miles, for those are the units of a world that stays in one place, while the light year is the unit of a universe that is always in motion, always reaching out and always remembering. As we settle into this understanding, the scale of the 9.46 trillion kilometers becomes less of a daunting number and more of a rhythmic drone, a steady background frequency that hums beneath the surface of our observations. We are drifting through a sea of time, and the light year is our compass, pointing us toward the realization that we are never truly alone in the present, but are forever connected to the long, luminous history of everything that has ever been. The silence is not empty. It is full of light that is simply taking its time to reach us, carrying the secrets of the gods across the vast, protective stillness of the cosmic ocean. To begin our ascent into the architecture of the deep, we must first master the smallest increment of our cosmic yardstick, moving away from the familiar dimensions of our homes and cities toward the first true ripple in the fabric of time. We often think of the moon as a permanent fixture of our night sky, a silver companion that hangs just out of reach. Yet in the language of the cosmic ocean, it represents a distance of exactly 1.3 light seconds. This means that when you look up at the lunar surface, tracing the dark basaltic plains of the Maria and the jagged shadows of the lunar highlands, you are not seeing the moon as it exists in this precise heartbeat, but rather as it was a moment ago. This tiny lag, this 1.3 second delay, is the very first step in understanding that our perception of the universe is always a collection of histories rather than a live broadcast. It is a fundamental rule of the architecture we inhabit that information cannot travel faster than the speed of light, which creates a protective buffer between every object in the cosmos, ensuring that even our closest neighbor remains slightly separated from our immediate present. To grasp the physical scale of this first step, it helps to visualize the sheer volume of the void that exists between our world and its satellite, a gap of approximately 384,400 kilometers. If you were to take the length of a human arm, about 75 centimeters, and use it as a unit of measure, you would find that you could fit nearly 500 million of those lengths into the distance to the moon. This scale shift is the moment where our biological intuition begins to fail us, as we move from the tactile reality of things we can touch to the mathematical reality of things we can only observe. That is why the Apollo missions were such a profound testament to our ability to navigate the currents of the cosmic ocean, as the astronauts were not just traveling across a physical distance, but were engaging in a conversation across a ripple of time. When the world watched the grainy footage of the lunar landings, the pauses between the questions from Houston and the answers from the lunar surface were not merely technical glitches or slow reflexes. They were the physical manifestation of the light second, a tangible reminder that even at the speed of 300,000 kilometers per second, the universe requires a moment to carry our voices across the abyss. You may notice that this delay creates a peculiar kind of intimacy within our immediate neighborhood, a sense that the moon is within our local temporal bubble. If you were to stand outside on a clear night and feel the cool, pale light of the moon reaching out to touch your skin, you are experiencing a gentle echo of a moment that has just passed. Light that left its source when you took your last breath. This realization helps astronomers understand that the concept of now is entirely relative to where one stands in the architecture of distance. On the scale of a human life, a second is a heartbeat, a fleeting pulse of existence. But on the scale of the light second, it is a bridge that spans the entire circumference of the Earth nearly 10 times over. We are anchored to this silver mirror by a tether of gravity and light, a relationship that defines the boundaries of our home system before we venture into the much deeper, more silent waters of the inner solar system. As we stand on this first rung of the cosmic ladder, the humility of our position becomes clear, for even this vast distance to the moon is but a microscopic grain of sand when compared to the light years that lie ahead. We are currently navigating the very shallows of the cosmic ocean, where the ripples of time are small enough to be measured in the space of a single thought. But as we prepare to step beyond our silver companion and look toward the blinding intensity of the sun, those ripples begin to stretch into long, rolling waves. The architecture of the universe is designed with these immense buffers, creating a preservation of the past that allows us to witness the history of the stars as if it were unfolding before our eyes. We are moving away from the comfort of the light second and toward the light minute, where the silence between worlds begins to deepen, and the true scale of our solitude starts to reveal its majestic, terrifying, and ultimately peaceful form. This transition is not just a change in distance, but a change in our relationship with reality itself, as we accept that to look further out is to look further back, traveling through the luminous history of a universe that is constantly revealing its secrets to those who are patient enough to wait for the light to arrive. Leaving the silver, silent reflection of the moon behind, we move deeper into the brilliance of our local system, crossing a threshold where the unit of measurement shifts from the brief light second to the more expansive light minute, a scale that defines our fundamental relationship with the sun. This star, a yellow dwarf of immense power and rhythmic stability, sits at an average distance of 150 million kilometers from our world, a gap so significant that the photons generated in its core must travel for 499 seconds before they finally reach the surface of our planet. This means that when you step outside and feel the warmth of the afternoon sun on your face, you are experiencing energy that left its source over 8 minutes ago. It is a realization that helps astronomers understand the inherent delay in all cosmic observations, creating a world where the sun we see in the sky is never the sun of the present moment, but rather a ghost of the sun as it existed in the recent past. You may notice that this lag creates a protective grace period, a cosmic cushion of 8 minutes and 20 seconds that serves as a buffer between the cause and the effect, ensuring that our reality is always slightly decoupled from the immediate state of our star. If the sun were to suddenly vanish, we would continue to bathe in its golden light and feel its gravitational pull for those final precious minutes of borrowed time, blissfully unaware that our anchor has been lost. That is why the solar neighborhood feels less like an empty void and more like a backyard of fire, where the umbilical cord of light feeds every biological process on Earth, connecting the microscopic chloroplasts in a leaf to the massive, roiling fusion reactions occurring 93 million miles away. As we look closer at the solar surface, we see the rhythmic rise and fall of solar prominences, loops of plasma that stretch out into the vacuum like the slow-motion breathing of a titan, held in place by magnetic fields that are themselves governed by the same laws of thermodynamics that dictate the cooling of a cup of tea. These features, while appearing as static flickers from our perspective on the ground, are structures of immense magnitude, moving with a grace that belies their power and contributing to the constant, steady stream of the solar wind that washes over the entire system. It is also a reminder that we are never truly alone in the dark, as the sun's influence extends far beyond its visible disk, wrapping the planets in a protective magnetosphere that acts as a shield against the harsh irradiation of the deep. This connection is the very fabric of our survival, a luminous bridge built of light minutes that allows us to exist in a state of perpetual, delayed intimacy with a furnace of unimaginable intensity, finding peace in the knowledge that the light which warms us today is a gift sent from the past, traveling through the silent ocean of space to find us exactly where we are. To understand the true scale of this backyard of fire, one must consider that even though light travels at the fastest speed possible in our universe, the sun is so large and its interior so dense that a photon created in the core can take tens of thousands of years to bounce its way to the surface before it can even begin its 8-minute journey to your eyes. This random walk through the solar interior is a process of constant absorption and re-emission, a slow and arduous climb through layers of plasma that ensures the light we eventually receive has been seasoned by the very heart of the star over eons of time. This long-term storage of energy is what provides the sun with its incredible stability, acting as a thermal reservoir that keeps the light minutes flowing with a consistency that we have come to rely upon for our very existence. When you consider this, the sunlight hitting your skin is not just 8 minutes old. It is the final release of a journey that began when our ancestors were first discovering the secrets of fire, making every sunrise a connection to a deep, ancient past that is only now reaching its destination. It is a beautiful continuity that binds the micro to the macro, reminding us that the light minute is more than just a distance. It is a pulse, a heartbeat of energy that sustains the delicate balance of our atmosphere and the rhythmic cycles of our lives. Within this solar neighborhood, the planets drift like small, cool islands in a sea of amber radiance, each one positioned at a specific light distance that dictates its climate, its chemistry, and its potential to harbor life, all governed by the steady, unhurried arrival of photons from the center. We find safety in this distance, a respectful gap that allows us to benefit from the sun's power without being consumed by its intensity, a fact that makes our worries on Earth whether they involve traffic or our primitive methods of boiling water to generate electricity, feel like tiny, flickering shadows against the backdrop of a billion-year-old fire. As we move further out, beyond the warmth of these inner light minutes, the sun begins to shrink, losing its status as a dominant furnace and becoming a bright, singular point of light in the deepening blue of the outer system. This transition marks the end of our backyard and the beginning of the true deep, where the light minutes stretch into light hours and the familiar warmth of home starts to fade into the crystalline silence of the gas giants and the frozen plains beyond. We are leaving the light of the present and drifting into the light of history, where the gaps between objects become so vast that even the sun's immense power is reduced to a soft golden whisper in the dark. This is the edge of our immediate world, the place where the solar wind begins to tire, and the influence of our star meets the cold, incoming tide of the interstellar medium, inviting us to look further into the silence that lies ahead.